Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. And today I am joined by Chris Kirksey, who is the managing director at High Road Clean Energy. Very excited to be sitting down with you today, Chris. Thanks for taking the time. We're going to just
You,
dive into some things about business, about your journey into getting into business ownership in general, challenges, best practice. Really share kind of a sneak peek into what it's like to build and grow a business. So first off, thank you so much for taking the time. Would love if we could just start with a little bit of background. If you want to give us just high level brief overview of kind of who you are and your background, and then tell us what is High Road Clean Energy.
okay. I'm an engineer by education. I graduated from Texas Tech in Lubbock, so I'm living here in Longhorn Land. But I had a job with a material handling company right out of college, and then moved to Austin and worked for Austin Energy, the local electric utility, for 23 plus years. When I left there, I was over the generation assets, the power plants, and that kind of stuff. I left there and went to work for a company that was developing different kinds of power projects, natural gas fired power plants, wind projects, solar projects. We were really trying hard to build a clean coal project here in Texas outside of Odessa. I had a big government grant for that, and it just had struggled to get all of the rest of the financing and all the contracts together at the same time to do that. Then I kind of went out on my own doing some consulting work, and had a client that turned into this business relationship that is High Road Clean Energy. And we are an early stage utility scale solar developer. What that means is we will identify what we think is going to be a good site for a big solar project. We'll make contact with the landowners. We'll negotiate leases. One of the things you have to do if you're building a solar project in Texas is you also have to track down all the mineral owners and get them to sign off on a surface use waiver. And that proves to be somewhat challenging sometimes. We will also initiate there's some local property tax abatements that are available. We might initiate some other technical work, maybe even an environmental assessment. But at some point along in there, we will sell these projects to bigger developers that actually will take them all the way through to construction and even own and operate those. So we're obviously in the renewable energy space, in the energy world here in ERCOT in Texas, and that's kind of what we do.
Very cool. So I always like to just kind of start by setting the stage for the viewers, knowing that we've got a variety of different types of businesses and business structures and things like that are guests here on the podcast, and depending on what that structure looks like can give some perspective on kind of how we go through our conversation today. So I always like to ask, just kind of generally speaking, what does your current ownership structure look like for the business? And by this, I mean more of, sole founder, business partners, outside investors, kind of just generally speaking, what does that look like for y'all?
Yeah, so for us, it's pretty simple. It started off just two of us in the business. Actually, my senior business partner had another partner who left, and then I came in as a partner. We've since added a couple of other folks as junior partners to kind of help us through that. But the beauty of what we're doing right now is we require very little capital investment, so we don't have outside investors. We're kind of the captains of our own ship here, and so it's pretty simple. It works really well for us, but I have to say we're fortunate. Me and my primary business partner is that we don't have to have a regular paycheck. We've got either retirement or savings from other work that we've done, and not everybody can do that. So it's allowed the fact that we can has allowed us to develop this business, because it's a long-term play. When we sell these projects to other developers, a big payout's going to come when they actually go to construction, which can be probably 3 to 4 years before that happens. So we keep it pretty simple. We have actually created an affiliate company. It's called High Road Energy Marketing, and we brought in another partner. And the goal with that is to maybe go ahead and market energy that would come out of these projects that we're developing. And that's a minority and women-owned business. So we're kind of excited about that. We've gotten a lot of interest in it. Just still trying to work to close the deal on that front.
Very cool. So when we look at High Road Clean Energy currently, as one of the partners, what is your current role in the business? What areas do you focus on the most?
So my primary business partner is a lawyer, a recovering lawyer, as he says. So he handles a lot of that stuff. He also so we both grew up in rural Texas, and we have relationships with landowners. We know what a lot of these landowners, what's important to them. And so he has a lot of relationships there. We also have a CFO that's actually got a real job somewhere else. And so she works part-time for us as our CFO. And then we have another guy we brought in to help us with a lot of the geographical information stuff, looking at ownership on big project sites. So I focus mostly, because I do have a background in the utility business, I focus a lot on the technical side of things, relationships with ERCOT, the grid, with potential buyers of the offtake of the energy that's going to be generated, and even companies that potentially would supply equipment or build these things. Not that we're as High Road going to do that, but it's good for us to know what the market is like and who those people are and what the cost for these projects are going to be.
Mm. Very cool. So I want to, kind of dive a little bit deeper into the business itself, what makes it so special, kind of who you serve, that sort of thing. So I know you've talked a little bit about kind of who the business serves, but I'd love to kind of dive maybe a little bit deeper into that. And are there, maybe just by asking, are there a lot of competitors to what y'all do? Is this, very different compared to what's out there? Give us kind of the landscape of your business in comparison to others that are out in the marketplace.
The shorter answer is yes, there are competitors, but the more nuanced answer is that they're not quite like us, because we're so far have been pretty set on doing a transaction with these projects fairly early on in their development life. Whereas a lot of the big developers will take a project from the very beginning all the way through, but it's not glamorous, it's not complicated, but negotiating leases with landowners, tracking down mineral owners, getting all these things signed, it's not stuff people like to do. And normally these bigger developers, that's where somebody's gonna start out in the business. And so, we're a little bit more mature age-wise, and we've come from that background. So we kind of, in a lot of ways, serve the landowners, because if you think about, we're primarily trying to lease farmland, ranch land, that kind of the people who do that, it's an aging population. And so let's say you have somebody out there who's in their 60s and 70s, they've been doing this all their lives. The land that they're farming or ranching has been in their family for 3 or 4 generations, but their kids don't want to do it. And so, here's somebody, they're trying to figure out, what am I going to do with this? I don't want to sell it. I could lease it out and have somebody else do what I'm doing, but we're going to come in and offer them probably more money than they'll ever see, as a lease for a solar project, than they'd ever see farming or ranching. And they don't have to sell the property, and it's long-term income. I mean, these leases are 30 to 50 years long, and they're heirs, and they're going to benefit from this, and it's just security for them. So it makes it easier for these guys, some of these folks, to not have to make a hard decision about, what do I do with this property.
I like that. What do you believe is the number one thing to building the relationships with landowners that they own the land for so many years, all that kind of stuff? What does that look like for you? How do y'all really develop those relationships, and kind of what are the keys that you think are important there?
It's just you have to kind of understand what's important to them, and as I said, having a somewhat similar background helps. My grandfathers were farmers and ranchers. My dad, even though he's a school principal, he farmed and ranched on the side. And so I grew up doing that. And you just understand what all that entails and what that means to people. It's a lifestyle as much as it is a way to make a living. So you have to understand that. We're fortunate that we have gotten a fairly good reputation in this, and my main partner, being an attorney, has relationships with other law firms, with other attorneys and throughout the state. And we get a lot of referrals that way from these other attorneys because they know my partner. And I don't know, I guess that's one thing that kind of makes it special is we try to work really hard to build trust. I mean, we're not gonna, if somebody wants to carve out a piece of property where their house is, or they've used it for hunting or something like that, we'll work with them. We're not there to just come in and say, hey, we're leasing this property, you gotta get out of here. We'll work with them and try to satisfy what it is that they want.
Very
And we
cool.
typically stay involved even after we do a transaction and sell these projects. We stay involved until they go to construction, just to address landowner concerns, things like that, community concerns, things like that.
Got
We
it.
also have to kind of, it's not just the landowners. There's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of resistance to renewable energy, not necessarily from the landowners, but from different groups that, for whatever reason, think, this is Texas, we should promote fossil fuels. And we're of the opinion, hey, it's going to take all kinds of energy, and they're not necessarily competitors in the true sense that one is used for transportation and the other one might be used for lighting homes and businesses and things like that. So you have to build trust within the community as well, and you can do that in a lot of ways. We've formed a coalition with some other developers, renewable energy developers, in a nearby county, and went together and bought the county an ambulance.
Hmm.
And gave them some money to actually stock the ambulance because it doesn't come with all the equipment and gear that it needs in. So you just got to think about doing things like that.
Very cool. I love that. You had mentioned, selling the project to bigger developers, kind of that sense of things. I'm curious, just to kind of connect some of the dots here. How does your business actually make money? Like, what is the is it just selling the projects to developers down the road? Are you at that point in the business now, or is that kind of down the road a bit?
No,
Kind of
we,
what does that look like?
we've sold 10 projects so far. We've got another half dozen that we're working on to get them to the point where we can enter into a transaction. Yeah, our structures are typically, it's a success fee based thing. I mean, we sell them for so many dollars a megawatt for the project size, and we'll get, when we close on a transaction, we may get our expenses reimbursed and a small closing payment. There may be some milestones through there if there are some final site control issues that need to be done, or mineral owner issues that need to be resolved. And there are big payouts going to come when these projects go to construction, and maybe another remainder whenever the project goes into operation. So it's important for us to see these projects be successful and get all the way to the finish line. So if it's a lot of work, we'll typically negotiate a development services agreement where we will get paid to stay involved and handle landowner issues or tax abatement issues, mineral issues, some things like that. So it's as I said, it's not for somebody who kind of needs a steady paycheck.
Understood. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I always love to ask, around marketing in general. Marketing is one of those areas that I like to bring up on this podcast because it's an area that's vital to every business out there, and oftentimes an area that many business owners tend to kind of just be challenged with or struggle with. So I'm curious, for your business, what does marketing look like for y'all? How do you approach that with the type of business that you're in?
Yeah, good question, because obviously we're not out there selling anything to retail customers or anything like that. We've got a very specific market, and that is bigger developers that are in the renewable energy space. So I would say that some of that, it's mostly relationship driven, and it just comes from referrals, or I've been in the electricity business here in ERCOT for now going on almost or over 35 years, and so you tend to know people after a while, and even though they may move from company to company, you still maintain those relationships. And it's just calling them up and saying, hey, are you guys looking for new projects? If you are, here's something I can show you. Let me know what you think. So we've developed a pretty big pool of potential project buyers. And we don't tend to give up. If we get a lot of no's, we'll start going through our list of potential buyers, and in some cases reach out to somebody that we probably wouldn't, because there are financial organizations that aren't necessarily considered developers, but they fund developers, and they may want to buy a project and then find a developer on their own. So there's ways to be creative about that.
Very cool. So if I'm kind of understanding it, correctly, it's referrals, it's a little bit of networking with very specific types of groups, maybe some direct outreach to kind of those groups as well, and really developing relationships and partnerships, kind of being the core of what marketing looks like for your type of business. Is that correct?
Right.
Beautiful. Do you see that needing to change at all as you continue to grow and scale the business, or is that kind of where you anticipate seeing the majority of the growth as you continue to build the business?
I think that's it. All the potential buyers, they're all a little different. They all have different risk profiles, or they want to see different things in a project, or see it maybe further along in the development stage before they're interested in buying it. So we have considered maybe bringing in some money, or maybe just using some of the money we've earned and taking these projects further into the development stages, because there's more value in them if they get there, but there's also quite a bit of cost. And what we've done, again, it doesn't take a lot of capital. What we typically do, it's mostly just our time and the effort, and we get a pretty decent payout on these things, but we could probably get twice as much if we spent a considerable sum of money to take them further down the development road. Again, though, it's going to take more time, and the time it takes us to take one project further to development to double our money, could we have just done another early stage project? So we have this ongoing debate within ourselves, kind of like, what do we want to be when we grow up, or do we want to grow up?
That's fair.
Yeah, and then we also are very leery about with other people's money comes a lot of strings, and so we're a little leery about that.
Yeah, that's I always love that, kind of the time it takes, the leverage there. Does it make sense to go further down? Yet we might make more money, but it also is going to cost us just as much in time. Would it be easier to do something different? Like that's an important lesson to kind of be thinking about there.
It is, and like I said, we have this discussion every so often, and we actually take it pretty far, and then kind of always come to the same conclusion. Well, maybe we're okay doing what we're doing. That said, we do have one project that we doing a little differently. We brought in a development partner that hasn't bought the project, but they're funding a lot of the development with the understanding that they'll buy the project down the road. It's good for us because it's helping us understand what it takes to take a project further into the development, maybe even all the way to where you start construction, and understanding what potential buyer project buyer might want to see. Did you do this part of it right? Did you do the interconnection process the way they wanted to do it? Have you negotiated the leases properly? Are you looking there's a whole nother topic is solar panels, solar modules right now. There's some tariffs that are being proposed. Actually, they were implemented, and then the Biden administration put the tariffs on hold. But it's about imported tariffs and imported modules, and so it's been good for us, but it is taking up a lot of our time. I mean, we're having to spend a lot more time on this project than we typically do.
I love it. So when you look at the next 3 to 5 years, kind of what does that look like as you continue to grow the business?
Good question. When my primary partner and I started off, we kind of thought we were riding a wave of solar projects here in Texas, and then we thought it was only going to last 3 to 5 years. And we thought, well, let's get in, do a bunch of projects, make a lot of money, and then ride off into the sunset. And so far, the wave has continued to grow. There's a lot of momentum right now because the Inflation Reduction Act includes some tax credit incentives that will boost renewable energy production. There's some other things in the works that can make it better. Now, there are roadblocks as well. The solar module issue is one. Imported modules coming. Mainly, it's an issue about modules or major components in the modules coming from certain parts of China that have human rights violations and things like that. So that's a roadblock. There are still ongoing issues. At some point, there are going to be issues about how do you integrate that much renewable energy into an electric grid. I would say it's still going to be around. We may be focusing on different ways to approach these projects. I'm not sure what that looks like, but for right now, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing.
I love it. Well, I do want to be respectful of time here. I know we've kind of been chatting for a while, have covered a ton of ground in terms of learning a little bit more about your business, the different aspects of how y'all operate, and just kind of pulling out some nuggets here. So before we move on, I'm just going to remind everyone who is watching this, pause it, save it, whatever, go back, rewatch it, because there are some good nuggets for y'all out there that are continuing to build business. But as we wrap up, I've got a few kind of rapid fire questions. I think got about 4 of them here, really top ahead to answer. I know we could go deeper on probably each of these questions, but kind of gut answer for this point here. And I've got 4 of them for us to go through.
Okay.
So first one. What is your key to success?
Persistence. I think what works well for us is that we do have diverse backgrounds. We see things from different points of view, and when one of us maybe gets discouraged, the other one's going to come in and say, "Well, you're not looking at it the way I'm looking at it." So sometimes we'll work a long time on a project, and we have had to just stop work on some of them just because they weren't ever going to work. But other ones, it's just plowing through and not giving up.
Love it. What's your one piece of advice for other business owners?
I think it's important to be, if you're doing your own business, it's important to be doing something that you like. I don't know that you have to love it, but it has to be something that you like and you don't mind the time and effort that it takes.
Beautiful. What's one book that you're either reading now or have read most recently?
Well, this has nothing to do with the business, but I'm about finished with a book that a former colleague wrote. He's not an author, but he wrote a book, and it's called Bones of Hilo. It's a Hawaiian-based murder mystery, and I was a little surprised at how good it was, and I don't know, it's just interesting. So I typically don't read a lot of fiction. I'm mostly history or maybe even some historical novels, things like that.
Very cool. I love that. Final kind of rapid fire one. You look at your business. If you could magically improve one area in the business tomorrow, where would you put that magic?
I would say it would be great to increase the diversity in our business. I think we're fortunate that we do have especially with our affiliate, a diverse group. But, I go to conferences and that are energy-based, renewable energy-based, and you look around and most people look like me, It would be great if there was more diversity.
I love that. So before we jump into the final question, I'd love to end every interview on for those that are watching that want a little bit more information, that want to kind of follow the work that y'all are doing, anything like that. Where can we direct them for more information?
We have a website, highroadcleanenergy.com. Um, our contact information is there. Um, that's that's the best place to start. I could point them to read a bunch of stuff, but at ERCOT and the PUC, but it's good material if you want to go to sleep.
I love it. For those that are watching, I'll make sure I put the website link in the description below. So make sure you go check all of that out. And LinkedIn's always a great piece here. So I'm
Yeah.
going to recommend everyone go reach out to Chris here on LinkedIn. Make sure you connect. These spotlight conversations are a lot of fun when we can kind of see some different connections happening. So highly encourage that. But as we wrap up, kind of final question I love to end these things on, and that is this. Chris, what is most inspiring to you today?
Oh, wow. So I came from a public power background when I worked for Austin Energy for a long time. And I'm inspired by people who are willing to commit and give their time and effort when they don't have to. I mean, there's a situation at the city of Austin and even Austin Energy now where there are people who have had a career and they've done that and they're willing to come back and help out and do that. And so it's just inspiring to see people give back.
Very cool. Absolutely love that. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a genuine pleasure to learn a little bit more about your business, about your industry. I know we don't always get to hear the type of business that you're in, so it is an exciting thing to kind of peel back, at some pieces there and just kind of understand the different types of businesses that are out there. So I appreciate it. It's been a lot
Sure.
of fun. Thank you for taking the time.
Sure. Thank you.